6 months after my fiancée left me standing at the altar, my father showed up at my door with a car seat in his hands. He had aged since I'd seen him last. His flannel shirt was buttoned wrong, his eyes were red, and he stood in my doorway, like a man who'd been rehearsing a speech the whole drive, over and forgot every word of it. The second I opened the door, I had just gotten home from a 12-hour shift at the plant. My boots were still on. I had a frozen pizza in my hand that I was already mentally apologizing to for calling it dinner. Then I opened the door, and there he was. My father, Harold Cole, the man who'd known for 2 weeks before the wedding that my brother had gotten my fiancée pregnant. The man who still sat me down and asked me to consider going through with the wedding anyway. Because people make mistakes, and a baby needs 2 parents. And now he was standing on my porch holding a car seat like it was an offering. "Nolan," he said, voice already cracking. I looked at the car seat, then at him. "No." He blinked. "I haven't said anything. You brought a car seat to my apartment, Dad. That's not nothing. That's an ambush with a 5-point harness." His chin trembled. "Just give me 10 minutes. I should have shut the door right there. 8 months of therapy had taught me that I didn't owe my family a seat at every disaster they invented. But curiosity is a hell of a drug. And apparently mine doesn't quit just because my heart's been put through a wood chipper. So I stepped aside and let him in. He walked through my place slow, looking around like he expected to find proof I'd fallen apart. Empty bottles. Takeout containers stacked to the ceiling. Some shrine to the wedding that never happened. Instead he found a clean kitchen, a couch I'd actually vacuumed, and a photo of me and my Uncle Desmond from a hunting trip, where we came back with nothing but ticks and a sunburn. My life wasn't much, but it was mine, and that seemed to bother him more than if I'd actually been a wreck. He sat at my kitchen table. I stayed standing. "What do you want, Dad?" He set the car seat on the chair next to him like it was a person. "It's about Maddox." Maddox? That was the bae's name. Brianna's son's, my brother Tucker's son, not mine. I'd seen exactly one photo, sent through Brianna's cousin a week after he was born. A small wrinkled red-faced thing wrapped in a hospital blanket with a little knit cap. Completely innocent. That was always the hard part. I never hated that baby. I hated the architecture my family had built around him before he ever took a breath. My father rubbed his eyes. "Tucker's not doing well." I almost laughed. Of course that's where he started. Not Maddox isn't doing well. Not Brianna is drowning. Not "I'm sorry for what we let happen to you." Tucker. Always Tucker. Shocking. Fatherhood didn't magically fix him, huh? I said. My father flinched. "Don't be cruel, Nolan. If you came here for softness, Dad, you brought the wrong equipment." He took a breath. The kind people take when they're trying to keep their voice level. Tucker's struggling. He wasn't ready for any of this. I stared at him. "Was I ready when you asked me to marry the woman carrying his kid?" His eyes went glassy. "That was different. No. You just liked that version better because I was the one who'd be carrying the weight." He looked down at his hands on the table. "Brianna's exhausted. The baby's got reflux, screams half the night. Tucker barely shows up. Says he needs space. Missed 2 pediatrician appointments already. Sends money when he remembers, which isn't often." I said nothing. "Brianna called your mother crying last night. Said she hasn't slept more than 2 hours straight in a month." "That sounds rough," I said. "It is rough, I believe you." He looked up, hopeful for half a second. Then I added, "I'm still not sure why that's sitting in a car seat in my apartment." His mouth tightened. "Because that boy needs someone steady." There it was. Steady. My family's favorite word for me since I was 14 years old, and the only one who showed up on time to anything. Steady meant useful. Steady meant Tucker gets to set things on fire, and Nolan gets handed the extinguisher. Because Nolan pays his bills and doesn't put his fist through walls. My father leaned forward. "Nolan, I know he's not yours by blood, but you might be the only real father that boy ever gets." For a second I genuinely couldn't speak. Not from shock, from the absence of it. Somewhere underneath my ribs I'd already known this exact conversation was coming. Dressed up in new clothes. My family hadn't learned a single thing. They'd just found a new shape for the same old ask. I pulled out the chair across from him and sat, slow, deliberate. "So let me get this straight. Tucker makes the baby. Brianna carries the baby. Tuss checks out, and somehow I'm still the backup generator." My father's eyes welled. "I'm not saying it like that. You never do. That's the trick. You make it sound noble when what you're really asking is for me to disappear into somebody else's mess. I'm asking you to think about an innocent child. No. You're asking me to clean up after Tucker." Again. He shook his head. "That baby deserves love." Agreed. "He deserves a father." Agreed. "Then how can you sit there and act like none of this is your problem?" I looked at him a long time, because it isn't. His face folded like I'd hit him. "Maybe, in a way I had." "I didn't raise you to be this cold," he whispered. "No," I said. "You raised me to be responsible for everybody except myself." That shut him up. For close to 10 seconds the only sound was my refrigerator, humming like it had somewhere better to be, too. Then he reached toward the car seat diaper bag clipped to the side. I stood up fast. What are you doing? He froze. I brought pictures. I don't want them. Nolan. No. You don't get to sit at my table and hand me baby photos like courtroom evidence. His mouth opened, closed. I held up a hand. I'm not saying that kid's guilty of anything. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve love. I'm not even saying I don't feel for him. But you don't get to use his face to rewrite what happened to me. His tears turned sharp after that. One day he'll know you could have helped him. I leaned forward. One day he'll know his father walked out, and everyone tried to put the blame on the man his father betrayed. He looked at me like he didn't recognize what was sitting across from him. Good. I was starting to recognize myself again. He left 12 minutes later, still holding that car seat like a man who'd forgotten how doors worked. At the threshold he turned back. Your brother is drowning, Nolan. Then. Maybe stop throwing him everybody else's life jackets, I said and shut the door. For the first time in months. I understood my family wasn't finished with me. They were just reloading. After the wedding that didn't happen, I'd spent a long stretch trying to build something that resembled peace. Nothing dramatic. No revenge arc, where I bought a motorcycle and started dating a woman named something exotic who owned a vineyard in Sonoma. My life didn't come with a soundtrack. I went to work at the plant. I went to therapy on Thursdays. I learned to cook something other than eggs and regret. I started sleeping through most nights. Not all of them. But enough. I'd cut Tucker off completely. My mother got blocked across the board after she called me heartless for refusing to step up for Maddox. My father had come around once, alone, and admitted he'd failed me. Which for him was practically a religious conversion. We weren't close, but he was the only one in that house who'd started saying wrong without tacking but on to the end of it. Brianna and I had zero direct contact. That was the healthiest call either of us made. Anything necessary came through her cousin Justine. There wasn't much. The engagement was dead and buried legally and otherwise. My name was nowhere near that birth certificate. The paternity test had seen to that. Tucker was legally Maddox's father. Emotionally, he was more like a weather system, occasionally present, mostly unreliable, and always something everybody else had to brace for. I learned that phrase from my uncle Desmond, my father's younger brother, the only person in my family with the spine to say ugly things without wrapping them in a bow. 2 days after my father's car seat visit, Desmond called me. Your dad came by, didn't he? I looked at my phone. How'd you know? He called your aunt crying about it after. Said you were cold. Did he mention the car seat? Desmond sighed. He didn't lead with that, didn't think so. He was quiet a second, then said, your mother's building a new story. I sat down on the couch. What story? The one where Tucker's overwhelmed, Brianna's suffering, the baby's innocent, and you're the one person too bitter to step up. I rubbed my eyes. Fantastic. Love getting cast as the villain in a sequel I never agreed to star in. Desmond chuckled once, then turned serious. Listen to me, your mother's not gonna let this go. Not because she thinks you're his father. She knows you're not. She's doing this because if you step in, even a little, then what Tucker did stops being so ugly. I stared at the floor. That was it exactly. If I got involved, even as a helper, even as the steady male figure in the room, my family got to exhale. They got to say, look, everyone came together, look, Nolan forgave us, look, maybe Tucker did something terrible, but the family survived it. They didn't want me to be a father to that boy, they wanted me to be a bandage for everybody else's wound. A few days later, Brianna asked to meet. Not through my mother. Through Justine. The text said Brianna wants to talk. Not to ask you for anything. She says your mother's spreading stuff and you deserve to know. I told Justine I'd only pass the message along. No pressure either way. I stared at that text for a long time. Meeting Brianna felt dangerous. Not because I was still in love with her. That version of us had been buried a while back. But because old pain has muscle memory. Sit across from someone who once knew exactly how you took your coffee, and exactly where your soft spots were. And the past pulls up a chair whether you invite it or not. I agreed anyway. We met at a diner off Route 9, the kind of place with vinyl booths, and laminated menus, and a bell over the door that announced everyone. Public, neutral. Bright enough that nobody could mistake it for anything tender. She was already there when I walked in. Exhausted but the real kind, not the performed kind people wear for sympathy. Hair pulled back in a knot that had given up an hour ago. No makeup. A pale stain on her sleeve that I recognized immediately as formula. She stood when she saw me. Hi, she said. Hi. We sat. I wouldn't have blamed you if you said no to this. Good answer. She wrapped both hands around her coffee mug. I heard your dad went to your place. He did. She closed her eyes. I'm sorry. Did you ask him to? Her eyes snapped open. No. I swear I didn't. I believed her. I didn't trust her the way I used to. That kind of trust doesn't grow back like grass after rain. But in that moment I believed her. He brought a car seat, I said. She winced. Oh my God, subtle. She looked down at the table. I told her not to drag you into this. That actually surprised me. You did? She nodded. Told her you owe me nothing. Told her Maddox isn't your responsibility. She got mad, said I was letting pride hurt my own son. I sat back. There it was again. My mother's particular gift for turning other people's boundaries into a moral crime scene. Brianna swallowed hard. Tucker's not showing up. So I heard. He came to the hospital once after Maddox was born. Took pictures. Posted one online with some caption about new beginnings. Then he left before the nurse even got back with the discharge paperwork. I said nothing. He promised he'd come to appointments. Missed the first one, work thing. Second one said he was sick. Third one, he just didn't answer his phone. I stared into my coffee. Her voice cracked. I know I made this bed. I'm not asking you to tell me I didn't. But I need you to know your mother's been telling people you abandoned that baby. My jaw tightened. She said that? Brianna pulled out her phone, slid it across the table. A screenshot. A message from my mother to some cousin named Pam. Nolan is so angry he refuses to see what this child needs. Maddox didn't ask to be born into this. Nolan could be the only real father he'll ever know. But he's choosing bitterness. I read it twice. Bitterness. That's what my mother called it when I declined to be used. There was a second message underneath. He was engaged to her when the baby was conceived. In my heart, that still means something. I almost laughed out loud. Jesus. Brianna looked ashamed. I'm sorry, for which part? She took it, all of it. Another good answer. She pulled her phone back. I'm not asking you to fix any of this. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just thought you should know she's building a version of the story where you're the reason this baby doesn't have a father. I nodded slowly. Where's Tucker now? She gave a short, tired laugh. Depends who's asking. If it's your mom, he's overwhelmed. If it's me, he's busy. If it's the court, he's unreachable. He paid anything? A little. Once. Your mother paid more than him and told everyone it came from Tucker. Of course, she did. Tucker's reputation apparently ran on family-funded life support. Brianna looked at me a long moment. I know this probably doesn't mean much. But I told your mom to stop. I told her you're not his father. I looked away. It meant something. Not enough to fix what had happened. Not enough to erase anything. But enough to keep me from hating her in that moment. Thank you, I said. Her eyes filled. I'm trying to do better. For his sake, I hope you do. She accepted that. When I left the diner I was angry, but it wasn't the explosive kind. It was cleaner, more focused. My mother was rewriting the story again, and this time she was using a baby as the pen. The family group chat came back to life the following week. I'd muted it months earlier, then left it entirely after the wedding fell apart. My mother apparently decided boundaries were a software glitch and added me back herself. The chat was still named Cole Family. I stared at it on my phone like it was a rash. First message, from my Aunt Pam. Nolan, we love you, but your mother is very worried. This is bigger than anger now. Then my cousin Brett. The baby didn't do anything wrong, man. Then someone named Sherry, who only surfaced at Thanksgiving and GoFundMes. Real men step up for kids. I nearly threw the phone across the room. Real men. That phrase again. Real men forgive. Real men provide. Real men raise the babies their brother's father, with the women they were supposed to marry apparently. I stayed quiet, then Tucker showed up in the thread. Don't bother. Nolan loves playing the victim. He's using the kid to punish all of us. I sat very still. There are moments where anger wants you to scream, and there are moments where anger hands you a folder and tells you to be precise. I opened my saved screenshots. Tucker telling Brianna he wasn't ready for full-time dad stuff. Tucker telling my mother, can't Nolan just help out for a while? He's better with responsibility than I am. He's always wanted to play saint anyway. I posted that one first. The chat went dead silent. Then I posted another. Tucker to Brianna, stop pressuring me. You knew this was complicated. Then another. Tucker to my mother, he's better with responsibility, ask him. Then I typed I did not abandon that baby. Tucker did. You're all mad because I refused to replace him. Nobody answered for almost a full minute. Then Uncle Desmond, that about covers it. Aunt Pam. Linda, is this true? My mother didn't answer. Tucker did. You're pathetic for posting private stuff. I wrote back. You didn't care about private when you slept with my fiancée. You don't get privacy for walking out on your own son. That ended the chat for the day, but like anything my mother touched, it didn't die. It got organized. 2 weeks later Desmond called again. Your mother's planning something. I closed my laptop. What now? Maddox's christening. I frowned. I didn't know they were doing one. Brianna's family wanted it small. Your mother wants everyone there. She's telling people it'd mean a lot if you came. I laughed. No, good answer. But listen, she's also telling people you were invited and probably won't show, because you can't let go of your anger. I pinched the bridge of my nose. She's setting me up. Yup, if I don't go, I'm heartless. If I go, she tries to force some moment probably. What would you do? He sighed. I'm not you. But if I went, I'd go prepared. I knew exactly what that meant. I didn't want to go. Every healthy part of me said stay home, turn the phone off, let them perform their little play without an audience of one. But the trouble with staying silent is that people like my mother treat silence as open land. They'll build whatever they want on it if you let them. So I went. Not to celebrate. Not to bond. I went because my mother had spent months turning my absence into evidence. And I was tired of letting her speak for me. The church was a small brick building outside town, the kind with stained glass, and the kind of quiet, where people whisper even when nothing holy is actually happening. I showed up 10 minutes late on purpose. Desmond was waiting by the entrance, saw the folder under my arm, and nodded once. "Good," he said. "Nice to see you too." Inside I spotted Brianna first, standing near the front with Maddox in her arms, dressed in a white outfit with socks too small to be real. She looked nervous. When she saw me her eyes went wide and she mouthed "I'm sorry." I nodded once. Tucker stood near the aisle, checking his phone. The way you'd check it, while waiting on a delayed sandwich. Not while watching your own son get baptized. My father stood off to the side, stiff. My mother moved through the room greeting relatives. It's like she was hosting a benefit gala for her own suffering. When she spotted me her whole face lit up. That scared me more than if she'd looked angry. "Nolan," she said, walking toward me with her arms already open. I stepped back. "No." Her smile faltered, then recovered fast. "I'm so glad you came, I'm sure. People were watching." "Of course they were." She lowered her voice. "This means more than you know." I looked at Maddox, asleep against Brianna's shoulder. "No, it doesn't mean what you want it to mean." Her eyes sharpened. "Please don't do this today, I wasn't planning to. Were you?" She looked away. The service was short. Maddox cried when the water hit his head, which honestly seemed like the most reasonable reaction anyone had had all morning. Afterward, everyone shuffled to the fellowship hall for coffee, store-bought cookies, and emotional ambushes. I stood near the back with Desmond. Brianna kept her distance, which I appreciated. Tucker avoided eye contact, which I expected. My mother waited exactly 18 minutes before she made her move. She walked over holding Maddox. That alone made my shoulders lock up. Brianna trailed behind her, panicked. Brianna said softly, "Please don't." My mother ignored her. She stopped in front of me, smiling through tears already forming. "Nolan," she said, loud enough for the nearby relatives to hear. "Would you like to hold him?" The room shifted, not physically, emotionally. Aunt Pam turned her head. Cousin Brett paused mid-cookie. Tucker looked up from his phone. My mother held the baby out, just slightly. Not enough to shove him at me. Just enough to make refusal look monstrous. It was a beautiful trap. If I took him, she'd tell everyone my heart was softening. She'd cry. Snap a photo, start calling it healing, before lunch was even cleared. If I refused I'd look like a man who rejects innocent babies in church basements. I looked at Maddox. He was awake, blinking up at the fluorescent lights, with the confused seriousness of a very small old man. Innocent. Completely innocent. That was exactly why I wasn't going to let her use him. I looked back at her. "No." Her face crumpled. "No," I said again, calm and clear. "You don't get to use a baby as a prop." The room went silent. My mother's mouth opened. Brianna whispered, "Oh God." Tucker muttered, "Here we go." I turned my head toward him. "Yeah, Tucker. Here we go." My mother pulled Maddox closer to her chest. "How can you be this heartless?" There it was. The line she'd been saving up. She wanted witnesses. So I gave her some. I set the folder on the nearest table. "Before anyone calls me heartless, let's talk about who actually walked out on this kid." My father stepped forward. "Nolan, not here. You had months to handle this privately," I told him. He stopped. That mattered, at least he'd learned when to stop talking. Tucker shoved his phone in his pocket. "This is insane." "No," I said, "this is documented." My mother's face went pale. I pulled out the first page. Message from Tucker to Brianna after Maddox was born, saying he wasn't ready to be tied down by a feeding schedule. Someone gasped. I pulled the next one. Tucker telling my mother I'd be better at the dad stuff than he is. Aunt Pam looked at Tucker. "Did you actually say that?" "It was taken out of context," he snapped. Desmond laughed once. "I'd love to hear the noble context." I pulled out a third page. My mother telling Brianna not to pressure Tucker, because he shuts down under stress. My mother whispered, "I was trying to keep the peace." "You keep calling it peace," I said, "when you mean silence." Brianna stood frozen, tears sliding down her face. I looked at her. "Did I ever promise you I'd be his father?" She shook her head. "No." "Did I ask you to make me one?" "No." "Did I ever threaten you or him?" "No." "Did I say I hated him?" Her voice broke. "No. You said he was innocent." The room was completely still. I turned back to my mother. "So why are you telling people I abandoned him?" She clutched Maddox tighter. "I never used that word." I pulled out the group chat, screenshot. Aunt Pam read it over my shoulder, her face hardening. "Yes you did, Linda." My mother started crying. Not the quiet kind. The big public wounded kind. The kind she pulled out whenever facts get inconvenient. "I am just trying to make sure this baby has love." "No," I said. "You're trying to make sure Tucker carries less shame." Tucker stepped toward me. "Don't talk about me like I'm not standing here." I looked at him. "You act like you're not standing here every time your son needs you." That landed hard in the room. His face twisted. "You don't know what it's like." I almost smiled. "You're right. I don't know what it's like to father a kid with the woman I was supposed to marry, then complain that parenting's stressful." He went red. Desmond stepped beside me, not touching me, just standing there. Tucker clocked him and stopped moving. "Nolan, please," my mother said. "He needs someone steady." I looked at her and something settled inside me. All my life she'd used that word like a compliment. Steady, responsible, strong, dependable, but for the first time I heard what it actually meant, available for sacrifice. "No," I said. "He needs adults who stop protecting unstable men." She stared at me. I kept going. "I'm not his father. I'm the man this family betrayed before he was even born, and I'm not going to let you use his innocence to clean your guilt off your hands." Brianna sobbed into her palm. Tucker looked away. My father closed his eyes. My mother whispered, "But he could love you." That one hurt. Not because it was manipulative, though it was, because some part of it might have been true. Maybe Maddox could have loved me. Maybe in some other version of this. One where Tucker wasn't Tucker, where Brianna hadn't done what she did, where my family hadn't turned my pain into a scheduling inconvenience. I could have loved that boy too. But a possibility isn't an obligation. And love built on a lie just becomes a different kind of cage. I looked at Maddox, fussing now, probably because every adult in the room was radiating disaster. "He deserves love," I said. "He also deserves the truth. And the truth is his father's standing right there." I pointed at Tucker. He looked like he wanted the floor to open up and take him. For once it didn't. "Tucker isn't ready," my mother said. "Then stop asking me to be ready for him." Nobody spoke. Then Brianna did, quiet but clear enough for the whole hall to hear. "He's right." My mother turned on her. "Brianna." "No," Brianna said, holding her arms out for Maddox. "Give me my son." That shifted the room more than anything I'd said all morning. My mother hesitated. Brianna stepped closer. "Give him to me." Slowly, my mother handed him over. Brianna held him to her chest, kissed the top of his head and looked around the room. I heard Nolan. Tucker heard Nolan. Linda and Wade protected Tucker. Nolan didn't abandon this baby. He was never his father, and I'm done letting anyone use my son to keep punishing the one person in this whole story who actually told the truth. I didn't expect that. Neither did anyone else. Tucker laughed, bitter. "Now you're defending him?" Brianna turned to him. "No, I'm done defending cowards." His face changed. That was the first moment he understood Brianna wasn't going to be his shield anymore either. My father finally spoke. "Tucker." Tucker looked at him. "You need to step up or sign whatever needs signing so Brianna can stop chasing you down." My mother gasped. "Wade," he looked at her. "No, Linda, enough." 2. For my father that was practically a revolution. Tucker looked around the room and realized, maybe for the first time in his life, that nobody was about to rescue him. So he did what Tucker always did when consequences got close. He left. Walked straight out of his own son's christening reception without another word. The silence behind him was heavy but not surprising. Brianna bounced Maddox gently, tears still wet on her face. My mother sat down hard, like her knees had finally given out. I picked up my folder. Desmond touched my shoulder. "You good?" I looked at the door Tucker had disappeared through. "No, but I'm done." I meant it. After that day something shifted. Not all at once. Families like mine don't heal in one church basement next to a tray of grocery store cookies. But the light cracked through. Aunt Pam called me 2 days later and apologized. Cousin Brett texted that he'd believed the wrong version of everything. Sherry, the real men step-up expert, never reached out, which I took as a small mercy from whoever's running things upstairs. Brianna sent one message through. Sorry your family tried to make Maddox your burden again. I won't ask you to be his father. I should have said that a long time ago. I read it 3 times, then replied thank you. I hope he grows up safe and loved. That was all. It was enough. My father called a week later. Tucker had agreed to a formal support arrangement. After Brianna threatened to take it to court, and Desmond had offered to personally drive him to sign it, which I would have paid actual money to witness. My father also mentioned my mother wasn't speaking to him. That must be peaceful, I said. He sighed. A month after that my mother sent me a letter. An actual letter, because apparently she'd discovered that stamps bypass phone blocks. I almost threw it out unopened. Instead I opened it standing over the trash can, like a man bracing for the inevitable. 4 pages. She loved me. She'd made mistakes. Watching me refuse to hold Maddox had broken her heart. She still believed I had a gift for caring, and that boy would benefit from having me in his life. There it was. Even the apology came with a job assignment attached. I put the letter back in its envelope, wrote across the front, "This isn't an apology. This is another assignment," and mailed it back to her. Maybe that was petty. I slept fine. Life kept moving in small, unremarkable ways. I kept up with therapy. I got promoted at the plant, mostly because I could run a production line on autopilot, while emotionally checked out. Which apparently passes for leadership these days. I bought a real couch. Desmond and I kept fishing badly together on weekends. Catching nothing but conversation. My father and I started talking occasionally. Not often, not deep, but honest, which was new territory for both of us. Tucker became a father in the legal sense. Whether he ever became one in any meaningful sense, I couldn't tell you. From what I heard, Brianna stopped asking him to care and started requiring him to comply. Healthier. Probably. Maddox turned 1. I didn't go to the birthday. Nobody asked me to. My mother apparently cried about it for 2 days. I didn't respond. People think boundaries are about anger. They're not. Anger runs hot. It burns out, changes shape, eventually leaves. Boundaries run colder than that. They're the fence you build after the fire so people can't keep walking through the ashes asking why you're still upset about it. Do I think about Maddox? More than I'd admit out loud. Sometimes I wonder what he'll be told when he's old enough to start asking real questions. I hope Brianna tells him the truth gently, not the ugly parts first. But enough that he doesn't grow up inside the same fog I did. I hope Tucker figures it out eventually. Though hoping Tucker figures anything out has been a family tradition with a pretty bad track record. I hope my mother learns the difference between loving someone and controlling them. I hope my father keeps finding whatever spine he found that day in the church hall. I hope I keep mine. But here's what I know now. Being decent doesn't mean being available for every burden somebody else hands you. Being kind doesn't mean turning yourself into the solution for a problem you didn't create. And loving a child from a careful distance doesn't require letting the adults who failed him use his face as a way back into your life. I didn't abandon that boy. His father did. My family was just angry that, for the first time, I refused to stand in the space Tucker left behind.